next one's in.
Oh, right. Okay. So the next item is the draft Cranford Regeneration Plan approval for community engagement. And given that this has been largely... Richard, you can come forward because we're on to Cranford. Yes, that's right. That's right. Cranford Regeneration. And so I'm happy to move this. And do I have a seconder for it? Mike? So are there any questions for staff? Glenn?
Thank you. It's not going. Oh, well,
I can hear you, Glenn. I can hear you.
Thank you. But the question is just over the residential fringe. Okay, so it's obviously beyond the problematic land. My question is why? And this follows the previous discussion, in my view, that we've just had over land supply. So we've answered the land supply question. Yes, I do understand the connectivity with that part of the city. It looks quite beneficial, but do we really need to do it when we've got plenty of land at the moment for residential development?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, actually. I guess the first thing I'd say is that the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act is not about land supply. So that was one of the principal concerns or issues that we need to address through the district plan review. And so the Act doesn't see that as being an issue. It's about regeneration, so it's not about land supply. So second question is, I think what we've seen post-quake is this dispersed land use pattern, increase in the amount of greenfield priority areas coming to the market, and a lot of growth in those sorts of locations, in the northwest and southwest of Christchurch in particular, and also out to Selwyn and Waimak. What this location offers to us, which is different to that, while technically greenfield priority area, is its location in close proximity to a key activity centre, and that's not just a mall. You have other facilities there, such as the Grey and Condon Centre. You've also got strategic transport routes in close proximity, as well as the major cycleway. You've got the PT route running up Main North Road and into Papanui, as well as the super stop there outside the mall. So in terms of its location, it is far better from our perspective than any of the other areas that we're looking to develop on the outskirts of Christchurch. And the other benefits you get from this as well, putting aside the difficult geotechnical and other challenges, is the fact that because you've got reasonably large lot sizes, it enables you, rather than the infill where you're really just getting an extra dwelling on a single lot, it enables you to develop it comprehensively and get better urban design outcomes. So that's one of the real benefits you get from this location. And from the work that we did as part of the district plan review, we don't think there's any other location in and around Christchurch which is as good as this from that perspective. So locationally, great. But there are other challenges which you alluded to around geotech, hydrogeology, those sorts of things.
Thank you. If I may ask, I'm just thinking too in terms of uptake. So I can see the benefits. There's also at least one disbenefit, and that is in relation to the Northern Arterial. What would be the uptake? There's already QE2 running through the Northern Arterial. Yep. Who really wants to live next to a motorway system like that?
So the main area of land, if council, remember this is only approving this to go out for consultation, so it's not approving it per se, it's only seeking public comment. So the main area of land that, if approved, this would enable residential around is around Grasmere, so that's not so much an issue for the Northern Arterial, although there's more localised transport issues that need to be addressed there. The other one is what we've called the Crozier's Road block, and that is in proximity to it. What we're suggesting is as part of the controls for this is an overall cap on the number of dwellings that you would get in there, so that would limit the impact you'd have on those things. But I guess the overall question, the overall issue in relation to transport, if the growth doesn't go here, it's got to go somewhere. So you're really shifting the problem from one location to another location, and from our perspective it's better to have the growth in an area where people have transport choice as opposed to locations where the only choice is a private motor vehicle, and the issue with that is that it's often single occupancy private motor vehicles. So but here you've got choices such as major cycle routes and public transport.
Thank you for the report.
So my question is around the suitability of this land for building. Is there much difference between this land and the land that was deemed red zone after the earthquakes in terms of a geological?
I don't think that's relevant to going into public consultation on the draft regeneration plan.
I wouldn't mind knowing.
Because geotechnical reports will be required for the building consent. So, but look, can you answer it from the generic point of view? Because it's just not possible to ask staff to compare two pieces of land when they haven't got geotechnical reports sitting in front of them.
We have had some technical studies done, and from our perspective, while the land is geotechnically challenging, as there are also hydrogeological issues there as well. What we're saying is we think it's good to go in terms of rezoning it. That doesn't mean that further work doesn't need to be done, particularly at the land use and resource consent and building consent stage. So that's not normal though. So this isn't new. This is stuff that we have to address all the time. We know what the challenges are, and we're a far better space than for other parts of town where perhaps we hadn't done the level of detail in terms of investigation. So, but you can only really answer those questions when you know where the houses are going to go.
Yeah.
And what sort of houses you're looking to put in there. So it's very difficult for us to get into the nth degree of detail on geotechnical and other matters when we don't know what the development form's going to look like, because all this does is enable development. It doesn't require it, and we're not down to the stage where we know what houses are going where.
The reason that I kind of intervened is that there is a misunderstanding that the red zone decision was solely about the land. It was actually how the land had been built on, which was problematic. Unreinforced concrete slab foundations on the edge of a wetland susceptible to lateral spread and liquefaction is probably not a good idea, but that was what was allowed to occur. This won't be allowed to occur here. So, you know, I mean, susceptibility to liquefaction, lateral spread, all of those issues will be dealt with at the geotechnical level. I think the question that I wanted to ask was, what changes would have to be made in order to make this land even considered for development to the regional policy statement, to our district plan, and what other mechanism would do this in a relatively short space of time if it goes other than through a regeneration plan?
So a couple of things there. I think the regeneration plan, we've put something in the report which essentially says, you know, we can't promote public plan changes until 2021. This land is outside the urban limits for the regional policy statement. Environment Canterbury are looking to review that, but they're probably not going to finish that until 2023, 2024. So you're getting up to 10 years' time if you don't use this process. And then at that stage, council, depending on the legislation, would be looking at reviewing its district plan. So the question council would go, well, do we want to do separate plan changes when we're in the middle of reviewing our district plan? Well, probably not. That process might take 5 or so years. So if it's not promoted, all other things staying the same, if it's not done through this process, you're probably looking at not having residential development until around 2025, 2030 or even beyond. Probably 2035. So this is the only process at the moment that is available to us to enable residential development to occur around the Cranford Basin area, unless something is to change in the future.
And where has this come from? Like, who is the proponent to sort of propose this?
Council.
We have.
So we're the proponent. And essentially what we went through is...
Council resolved to do this last year.
We prepared an outline which we reported to you at the end of last year. That was approved and gazetted in January, and we described that loosely as the entree before the main course. We're now at the main course. We're looking to bring the main course to you for notification.
The dessert.
There is no dessert. Sorry to inform you, there's no dessert. But this is really putting it out for public comment. The key fundamental decision for council is if you do approve it for public comment, would be on the 23rd of May, and when we'd bring it back to you for approval to then give it to Regenerate Christchurch. And now Regenerate Christchurch might further change it before they send it to the minister. and if they are to change it substantially, then it would have to be circulated to the Section 29 parties, and we referred to those earlier in the week as being DPMC, ECAN, Ngāi Tahu, Regenerate Christchurch, and Otakara.
Thank you.
Very good. Phil, Pauline, Yanni.
So you referred to the hydrology of the area before, Richard, and I just really want to ask, and my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that in fact the current infrastructure would cope with any future flooding of this wider area, and some of that's been currently improved right now. But my question really is about how, my understanding is that the section size is likely to be large sections, and is there a way that council will have of ensuring that happens as a way of also, I guess, mitigating the fast water runoff and that kind of thing?
I won't try and embarrass myself by answering the hydrogeology type questions. I'll leave that to Graham. But in terms of the section sizes, that's what we're seeking to enable is medium density in close proximity to the mall itself, and we think that makes use from a land use perspective, assuming that the applicant for the resource and building consents can come up with a suitable foundation design. So it would be medium density in and around that area. Some of the areas which have greater constraints will more likely be of a large lot type scenario. So it's more medium density development. But Graham, would you like to give a bit of an overview just of the stormwater and other matters?
Immediately downstream from this particular area, we have our large Cranford Basin area, which has been thought of as a major stormwater detention and treatment area for many years. And as a part of this whole project, if we do this work now, then it can be accommodated reasonably easily in that large area downstream.
Pauline, Yanni.
Mine was really following along from Phil's as well, but and when you say this land is not really suitable for building on, if you're not looking at it in a sort of physical building the house, but for me I'm concerned about coping with the stormwater, and it's not just the houses, but there'll be some roading in here to service those houses, and 420 houses is what we're kind of looking at. So that's a concern to me, and particularly in perhaps a storm event. So where would all that water go? Because I don't know, would that detention basin be big enough to accommodate all of that? Because we are putting another pump in there, am I right? And that will pump to...
The short answer is yes, the detention facility can be managed to accommodate the additional input from that area. It is a very large area and be quite a minor addition to that area, to that storage volume.
So you've done the modelling?
Yes, there has been modelling done of potential developments around there, but it's a relatively minor part of the total catchment which goes into that area. The catchment for there begins away up at Bishopdale.
Well, I mean,
arguably
Bishopdale has caused a lot of the issues in there anyway, is what people say historically, that the trouble began because we didn't put an appropriate stormwater detention when we put Bishopdale in.
Yeah. As for additional pumps, there's not a plan to have additional pumps. There is a plan to do some automation there to make sure that pumping from the Flockton Basin area can be accommodated with priority and some additional storage used in Cranford Basin to balance that out. So,
but see, what I'm concerned about too is the future OPEX costs that will rest on council. So surely they must be reasonably high.
Yeah, I can't comment on that. It would be something like a parkland area, a major wetland and stormwater area, and we have budgeted for that work on into the future.
Okay. And the other concern I have is the transport impacts. So we've already got, see, a lot of those houses will probably not take Papanui Road because it'll be a bus priority, but they'll take Cranford Street down to town. So that's another, with the Northern Arterial, that'll be additional traffic impacts. So will that all be part of the resource consenting that'll come up?
So we've done some work as part of this and as part of this proposal, and we've had the traffic assessed in-house, and we're comfortable that we can address the impacts. That's part also of the reason for the 420 cap that we're suggesting be incorporated within the provisions.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the difference with this is that the growth has to go somewhere. It either goes here, or it goes further out, or it goes in the up to Selwyn or Waimak. So the impacts of the additional traffic need to land somewhere on our network, and the benefit of them landing here is that there's more sustainable transport options.
But we've got the same issue. We talked about Highfield just a minute ago, and we talked about the East Frame and other areas, and I think the question for me is a bit like Dion here, is the why here? Particularly, I don't really think this is a great area to be developing personally, but why here?
But that was the question to ask when we actually agreed to do this. That was the decision that council made. The council made the decision to develop a draft Cranford regeneration plan, and as part of the regeneration process, it now goes out for public engagement. And this document that we're being asked to sign off on today actually establishes all of the issues that have been raised in the question. So they talk about the challenges of the environment, but they also talk about it being an opportunity to create close to existing residential form a very well constructed and developed and sensitive to the environment place in a very popular place that is zoned rural fringe. I mean, it's urban. What is it? Urban rural fringe.
Rural urban fringe.
Rural urban fringe. I mean, in the middle of the city. I mean, it's an anomaly within the city. The basin is absolutely a no-go area. We're talking about the land around the edge.
This actually contains a lot more information than I've ever seen before, and which gives me, pause for caution. But also,
which means you want to review the original decision then.
Yeah, well, I don't think there'd be much uptake for that. But we've also got to be clear what we're doing here. We're putting this out for public notification, so it's not consultation or engagement. And because it's a regen process, there's not as much opportunity for people to really feed back in such a way as they would if it was a consultation or a hearing. That's my concern too.
So, through you, Madam Chair, we have undertaken some pre-notification engagement with some of the key stakeholders in the area. We've been to the community board and some of the schools and others there. We are looking to notify it. If it approved today, we'd notify it for a month, and we would manage that process with and there would be drop-in sessions and public open days. So in that sense, it's not different to what we'd normally do, but you're right. The process doesn't allow for, or we haven't proposed a hearing or a formal process at the end. So that is different to what you'd normally get under a first schedule plan change under the Resource Management Act.
I'm just anticipating some sectors of the community that won't be happy with it.
But they will have an opportunity to make a submission on it. Yeah. And that will come back to us as a council as a whole. Yanni.
Thank you. I understand why this area. I guess the thing that seems to be missing from the plan that I can't find is how we address the social and affordable aspect of the housing. And I did wonder whether, we seem to have a real issue with greenfields, and that there's no requirement for affordable, apart from I think Aratia, affordable or social housing provision. And so when you think about what's happening as we grow as a city, we see a higher concentration of social housing in specific areas that's historic and an intensification, and then to the other areas we don't see any development of that housing choice for social or possibly affordable housing. So I just wondered if there was anything that we could put in here that talked about it. I know at Queenstown they talked about the community should gain the private gain from the developers is that they get rural land changed into residential, and there's an uplift for them, and the community should also get something in terms of a gain in terms of that rezoning through greater affordability. So is there anything that we can put in today that would enable us to consider that?
Yeah, I don't think there is much we can do about that, because the costs of this development are going to be higher than probably most other areas because of the remediation of the land that's required and the building standards that need to be met. I think it's the greenfield or the areas around the city vary in terms of their costs. This would be one of the more expensive ones to develop because of the earthworks and the development that we need to go through. So it's pretty unrealistic, I think, to expect what we call affordable housing. And its location, when we look at the demographic profiles out there, the house prices are already at a level which we wouldn't put them in the affordable range for quite a bit of that catchment area. What we have managed to do, though, when we've been talking to the landowners and potential developers, is to get them to consider a choice of housing typologies. And the 420 housing will actually have some lower end housing in it. But there won't be what you call the affordable end, but they'll be probably within the range of, say, a first home buyer using KiwiSaver to get a 10% deposit or something like that. But it's not going to be unless the council decides to intervene or a housing provider. It's unlikely to be at social housing, and I suppose it won't be at that sort of lower end of the affordable area because of those costs.
Okay, so
does the size of the section have an issue with that too? Because I mean, you can get affordable housing when you've got the higher densities. But not so much necessarily when you've got the larger sections, which is this medium density. Yeah,
the large sections, and I'm talking about the half-acre sections, which we've rezoned around this area. They're very expensive and popular because they are lifestyle blocks within an urban context. So those ones will be expensive. The medium density will help to moderate the price, I think. Yeah. But we are seeking a good quality housing. We are seeking up to near life mark and Homestar standards for this, and as part of the regeneration and innovative housing concept we're trying to push. But yeah, at the end of the day, those houses aren't going to be at the lower end of the market, I don't think.
So if people made submissions to this process, though, that they were concerned about that, is that something that can be addressed through the notification process?
Yes, I think we could have a look at it again. But I wouldn't promise you would necessarily get a different housing mix, but it's certainly a valid consideration and one we'd need to consider again if people made submissions on it.
Okay.
All right, so that's been moved and seconded. So is there any discussion? I'll put that motion.
Yes, sorry. I've got some problems with it. So I know it's a procedural matter. But the outstanding Ngaitahu issues in relation to Horseshoe Lake, and what I sense is a mismatch over the promotion of affordability being a main theme in the housing policy aren't sitting right for me. There's also the land supply total that we have in the city. I do take on board the facets of linkage with that area. I know the area very well. I used to work there for 9 years, but I'm just not convinced, and I know this is about consultation. Then again, it's not usual consultation as per the council. It's constrained, and we still have this outstanding issue over Ngaitahu and working that through. So it's just not over the line for me, and that's why I'll vote against it today.
Dion, and then Pauline, David.
I just want to I don't actually know what to do with this one particularly well, because I see the end goal of, what we're trying to achieve here, but at the same time, I just have a real struggle this soon after the earthquakes, looking at building back on areas like this, when we've got a whole central city that's got a whole lot of area that needs to be developed, and we've been reported that we've got an excess of houses, so we've got so many buildings and houses and stuff like that, and we don't not sort of intensificating the central city. And when we're looking at the hydrology issues here, I just kind of feel as though it's kind of like what Bexley was really, and that decision that was made many years ago. That's what I've been thinking about. Don't tisk that. That was just what I've been thinking about over the last few years. Nights about this. And it does set a precedent, in my opinion, for redeveloping red zone areas and doing regeneration plans on that. So if we do this for this type of land here, then what's stopping the argument for people saying, oh well, they're doing it for that, why can't we do this for the red zone, and redevelop on areas there? Are we going to be looking at that in the future or not? I don't know. That's what Regenerate Christchurch are meant to be doing. But yeah, I just echoed some of those issues around the stormwater runoff and the transport and everything like that. We've got some major problems around that. We still haven't got those Ngāi Tahu issues sorted out. But yeah, my big thing here is just taking away housing development and putting it over to there when we actually should be focusing on the housing development on the areas that we've got in the central city, and who's actually going to profit out of this.
Yeah, well, I'm in agreement with Councillor Livingston and Councillor Swiggs on this one, and we've got an area that I think is very challenging. There's a lot of new information that's come to me since we originally asked to look at this, and particularly around the geotech and the hydrological conditions of the land. And Ngāi Tahu is a big concern, and we see in the report there in 4.9 that discussions have been had, but no resolution has been found yet. Now, we could be looking at something like shades of Akaroa here, and the cost that we could be facing to have these negotiations sorted to come to a resolution, or no resolution, and keep trying to find a resolution for years and years. I'm not comfortable taking that risk on this. So due to the new information that I've just been reading up on about this, I'm not comfortable, so I'm going to vote against it as well.
Who was next? Sorry, I can't remember. David.
Thank you. I'm totally in support of this resolution. These parcels of land have been the subject of attempts for rezoning for years and years and years. We went and tried to deal with this issue through the LERP process, couldn't get it through. We can't deal with it under the district plan provisions at the moment for some time. We have been cogitating over this for years and years and years, and I think this regeneration plan has been very thorough. And I believe it's an opportunity to put this problem behind us and move on. Yes, there are one or two little issues that we will have to resolve going forward. Councillor Livingston has raised some with drainage, but I believe most of these other items have been touched on or can be addressed as we move forward with this. As I said at the outset, we have been tinkering with this for years and years and years, and this is the great opportunity to get it across the line and move on and deal with this issue once and for all. So I will be supporting this motion thoroughly, and I urge others to do so.
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I wasn't going to speak, but in response to a couple of things I've heard. One about the lack of to lower end housing and affordability, and on that I would say it's better to have housing than no housing, especially when we're looking at trying to intensify and build in areas that are more suitable, closer to public transport, closer to the city, and the long-term benefits of that. The more we're able to provide, the less the costs are going to go, increase significantly over time. When it comes to the type of land, I think we're in a different situation to Bexley and to other red zone areas, mainly because people will be going into this with their eyes completely wide open and new building technologies that have been advanced, especially since the earthquakes. The majority of this, if you have a look at the map on page 9, the large green area there, either side of the Northern Arterial, that's open space and stormwater management area. It's not housing, and will be used like that. And so I'm really happy for this to go out for public consultation. I do have some concerns over the Ngāi Tahu thing, but I think that that's something that can be worked through and needs to be worked through over time.
Yanni?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a similar point, although, I think the key thing today is to put this out for notification. I think if people really don't like it once they've heard back from the community, and this is the normal process, engagement process, consultation process for a region plan, so I think it's not that much different to a district plan, and the opportunity to hear from people, whether it's concern around the environment, concern around affordability, and the social and environmental outcomes versus the economic outcomes, I think is a really important question, and it's something that I really look forward to. But fundamentally, when it comes down to it, the logic in terms of being a sustainable city is actually to put in, I think, housing where we've got good infrastructure and good facilities, not to keep spending a huge amount of money, 400 million in growth expenditure going out further north, further west or southwest, when you've got areas like this that actually could be developed, and although the individual costs may be high in terms of the land, and I would expect that the lesson from Bexley is that it's how you actually design on the ground, or in the hills, for example, where we've had subdivisions going all the way up the hills, and I expect that we will be having a really good conversation, not just the geotech risk of rockfall, but also fire hazard, given what's happened. So it's actually, it's how you build on these areas that have got risks and how you mitigate those risks or avoid those risks that is the key thing. And I think we can work through the notification process on those issues. So I don't have the concerns that the others have about rejecting this today. I think the important thing is to hear from people over the merits of this plan, and until we've done that, I personally don't feel in a position to be able to say it's a bad idea. But I will signal that the issue of simply allowing people that own property to get rezoned and have a huge financial gain, while at the same time a community not being able to afford housing or not having social housing being able to be developed in these areas, is something that concerns me greatly, and it's something I'm going to be very mindful of as we go through this process. So, but fundamentally there's been a huge amount of work done to get to this point. I think the public and the community deserve to have this notified, and then I think it comes back to us to make that final judgment.
Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you. And Yanni has said almost everything I was about to say, in fact. We need to take account of where we are in this process. We need to take account of the amount of work that's been done to date. The decision we're making today is simply to go out for engagement as a part of the process. And looking at the end of paragraph 2.1, the council decision following the notification, written comments and engagement will be of higher significance. So we get the benefit of that feedback from the community and the ability to take all of that into account and then make further decisions on this. I think there's significant risk in going this far down the track with a regeneration plan, and in fact this early in the history of regeneration plans as well, and then at this meeting indicating that we may not be comfortable with the original decision we made to be the proponent of this regeneration plan. I think we need to go to the next stage. We need to allow for this engagement to occur. In terms of the issues that have been raised and the comparisons with other parts of the city, we have a number of ways of dealing with that. Clearly there'll be a need for geotech investigations, and we've heard that. There are any number of engineering capabilities that are available now that weren't a number of years ago. All of that will be taken into account in terms of any building that occurs on here. And of course we're dealing with that part of this area which is expected to be capable of being built on using that geotech engineering and those engineering techniques. We're not talking about the actual basin itself. So clearly there's more work needs to be done around geotech, around drainage and around building techniques. I'm confident that all of that can happen, but the decision that we're making today is whether to go out for engagement or not. And in my view, there's no question about the fact that we should and allow this to progress to the next stage.
Michael? Mike, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm getting all formal today.
Look, I think Yanni said everything really well. One thing I would like to add is obviously when we talk about trying to intensify the central city, I think it's it is a different type of housing, and not everyone's going to want to live in that type of housing. So this area, which there is already houses in, and we're talking about the fringe, we're not actually talking about in the basin, which I think there's a big difference, and anyone that does know the area and goes past it, it is right on the edge of urban development, and it needs to be sorted because it's not the most attractive place to be, and we've got a really good opportunity there to actually have someone develop that into a really nice housing area, and we can't keep losing our residents to the Waimakere area and to Selwyn because of the type of houses they have there. So we can't actually let opportunities like this go, and this is purely just agreeing to go out for public engagement. It is not agreeing that the plan will go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to give a great big long speech, but it's 12:07, and all I'll say is that I agree with everything that Yanni said. Go on, smile. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. That's carried. Noes are recorded as Cotter, Swiggs and Livingston.